Hey, everybody. Welcome to the, I don't know what number edition of the Boring Enterprise Nerds Nerdletter Talk with your host, Paul Moderman, and the awesome, amazing Yelena Perfilieva, also on the line. Say hi, Yelena.
Hi, everyone.
And what we do here is we just simply share our thoughts and dreams and hopes for the next edition of our newsletter, and we talk about the things we're going to write about. So I think let's just dive in, huh? Yelena,
Sweet,
kick us
sweet.
off.
All right. Let me start sharing as usual. So we usually all have at least three stories. Sometimes there is bonus. No
Yeah.
bonus for me this time. So my three stories will be as follows. So first one has a working title, Sneaky SAP Events. We, of course, everyone knows the big SAP events, SAP
Yeah.
TechEd, and there is like DevToberfest and some others that everyone knows, like Sapphire. That's pretty much very well advertised. But what I found that there are lots of little events, and they're mostly happening online. But it's super hard to find information when they're happening, and I frequently find about them after the fact, like for example, you see on YouTube recorded video or something like that. But it's always nice to be in those events live so that you can ask questions and participate, etc. So I will share several links. This is just one of them. This is Event Finder on SAP website. I have a couple of super secret links from SAP that show all those different little events that you probably didn't know even existed. So that's my SAP story. My second story is
Mm.
from my just absolute favorite Fireship YouTube channel. Um, this is an old video. You can see it's 3 years ago, but I find that this is very kind of current for every developer.
Mm.
And I find myself explaining the same thing essentially to beginner developers very frequently. So here the author is talking about problem solving for developers, and he shares a very specific issue and how he solved it here. But I think it's very important that he goes through exactly through the steps, how he thought about this, how he
Mm.
solved the
Mhm.
problem, how he approached it. So it's, even though this does not involve SAP or ABAP, I think this thinking process is exactly the same whether you work with SAP or JavaScript or any programming. So this is
So
super interesting.
you've heard of you've probably heard of rubber ducky debugging.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine in the current and advancing age of AI, where like I think it'd be a great little developer gag gift to make it like a rubber ducky, except it's hooked up to a chatbot that's like really smart and it talks back to you, right? So
Yeah.
you're like, rubber ducky, I can't figure out how to parse this, blah blah blah. Well, actually, if you just do blah blah blah, here's the regex, right? I think that'd be really cool, like leveling up rubber ducky debugging. But I know that's
Awesome.
not what
So
this is,
so
but
coming up this holiday season, it's your awesome stocking stuff for developers in your life. We will have this product available shortly on the boringenterprisenerds.com. All
what
right,
a what a
keep
that
your
like
keep your credit cards ready.
I'm sure we're gonna break Amazon's servers with how many
Yeah,
orders we'll get for that.
definitely. Yeah, gonna need to build a warehouse and buy SAP Business One probably to start with. We will need to solve this problem. Do we go with SAP for SME solution? Do we just buy SAP like public cloud edition
Oh,
because we're gonna grow into a huge empire? So so
that's how
so
we're gonna hit the IPO. Is
All right, let's not get ahead
uh,
of ourselves. Let's just first
yeah.
publish this newsletter. Whew. So and third one, so this will be the water cooler item of the year. I don't know if maybe I was just completely out of the loop. Maybe the rest of humanity already knows about it, but I literally just heard about it very
Oh,
recently.
the Unix epic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
apparently there is problem 2038, which has to do with time storage in Unix systems. So I think it's just obviously not the whole lot to write about it, but I think it's very interesting item to just think back about Y2K problem,
Yeah,
and in SAP world maybe 2040 problem or
I
whatever is the
mean,
next step.
we all know from our professional lives that somehow, somewhere, in like an ancient, dusty server room somewhere, an SAP customer is going to, or at that point, probably a former SAP customer, is going to run into a problem, and their Unix machine is going to die because of this.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, and that will be the trigger for them. SAP is going to see a little bump in like
In
2038
license sales, yeah.
in license sales because some ancient servers will finally die off.
Yeah, and then lots of SAP systems actually run on Unix, so
Yeah,
that's why I kind of thought that might be relevant. So these are my three items, and over to you, Paul.
very good. I will now initiate the screen sharing. See if I found the
Initiating
right.
screen sharing.
Initiating screen sharing. Roger that. We are a go for screen share.
10-4.
Uh, um, so my first thought point here is, Yelena, I know you've written about mock before,
Yep. Yep.
and there was another interesting article popped up about mock, and it was in the vein of composable ERP
Mm-hmm.
discussion of that. And there was like there's a lot more here, but I found there's a great thought buried in here that I
Mm-hmm.
think is resonating inside my head. Let me see if I can. Yeah. So this person or this company or this person has been working with their ERP vendors to adapt their ERP system so it provides specific services within the composable architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So in essentially under the covers of like a mock shaped thing, there's like a giant Leviathan, right?
Mm.
But its tentacles appear as though it's like separate composable services, really. But like underneath the ocean, it's still like the beast that will destroy you all, right? But to the
Yeah.
outside world, outside of that ERP system, it looks like there's like composable separate services, all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. But I mean, that's an interesting thing because I think a lot of the consternation around this kind of stuff is like, but I have this giant monolith.
Yeah.
Why would I break it up?
Yeah.
And there's like an architectural sort of response to that thought here, right? I know there's more stuff too, but I really caught my eye in this part of the piece with that stuff.
Mm. Yeah, if
Uh,
it's a good analogy, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, what you see on surface,
there's
separate tentacles.
the hear the call of Cthulhu, and we'll all be swallowed up into whatever
Yeah.
nothingness. Yeah. Um, so there's the second thing I wanted to do, which is actually shared across these other three links. But I just keep seeing more and more
Oh
action
yeah.
these days with SDKs for ABAP that
Yeah.
the major hyperscalers are introducing.
Mm.
And in several cases, it's like they're even sort of segmenting off their overall system. So in other words, this Microsoft one, Microsoft has like an Azure SDK for ABAP,
Mm-hmm.
but now there's an AI SDK for ABAP from the Microsoft side, and Google has an ABAP SDK for Google Cloud, and AWS has an SDK for ABAP. To me, it's like I think it just becomes clear too that like just like we've been talking about with other folks all over the place on this stuff is that going forward, I mean even before now, but going forward especially, like you can't be an SAP person in isolation. You can't like there's like it's really hard to be a techie and just be only like you only ever do like read SAP things. You're
Mm.
going to have to touch other stuff. That doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in AWS or an expert in GCP or whatever, but I think it does mean that you have to understand at least some of the shape of what you're looking at when you
Mm-hmm.
do ABAP work. You're just gonna do more than like change the header field of a sales order, right?
Yeah.
You're going to touch other stuff when you do that. And one of the best ways to sort of be prepared for that, I think, is just to read and learn about these SDKs and how they reach out and touch those other cloud services. And that similar kind of thing is going to be all over the place for other stuff too. So that's my sort of offering to the ABAP world is think about things in that way when you do
There
stuff.
was a kind of older IBM Watson SDK for
Mm,
ABAP. I think it came out like publicly around 2019 or so. So
mm.
there was a blog post on SAP community if you want to find. I'll send
That's
the
good.
link to you so that we can mention it, because I think I was actually thinking just recently about like how there are so many SDKs
Yeah,
right now for SAP. So I think it would be great to summarize this and to
yeah.
highlight some items here. Yeah, nice.
The final thing I wanted to talk about, I don't have a website or I don't have a like a link for this,
Mm-hmm.
but you and I are gonna um out there on the agenda for the Tech Connect conference coming up in November,
November.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
November.
November.
Um, you and I are giving a talk basically about upskilling,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I have some preliminary thoughts on that subject. Not the whole thing, but on how I think developers should approach the process of that
Mm-hmm.
and how they expand their learning stuff. The idea is this in rough shape. You've seen like these ancient cathedrals that have the flying buttresses,
Mm-hmm.
like the big giant
Yeah.
things that hold it up. My thing is like that developers should build their skills and continually be adding buttresses to the main cathedral of their
Mm.
skills rather than building those giant radio towers that are like really narrow and tall but that also like a tornado can wreck them really fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so that is the shape of my proposition for the piece I'm going to write about that stuff. So I think architectural metaphor somewhere in there, maybe. I don't know.
Mm.
But that's kind of my thought on that stuff.
Yeah, I'm just totally sold at the word buttress. I just allow it. I mean,
Sold.
yeah, cockpits and booby traps. All right, I'm getting
Well,
into
guys,
Family Guy
yeah.
territory here.
Thank you for attending this very adult and mature conversation
Yep,
about all things professional. Um, stay tuned to your email boxes or websites for the latest issue, and we will talk and see you soon. Bye,
awesome.
guys.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.